Welcome to a quick review of the Handknit Garment Design app, a companion tool for Shirley Payden's classic design book, Knitwear Design Workshop, or her Craftsy class, Handknit Garment Design. Using the book or the class, you can make your knitwear designs a reality, and using the app, you can do so with even less effort. As we work through a design example using the Handknit Garment Design app, be sure to use either Shirley's book or the class to go into more detail on design specifics. Let's get started on the home screen of the app. You'll see 4 separate sections. Tap Shirley's photo to learn more about her and her design career. Going back to the home screen, we can tap the lower portion to learn more about Shirley's iconic book, Knitwear Design Workshop. If you don't have this classic in your library, you want it, and you can purchase the book right through the app. On the right side of the home screen, you can access any of your earlier projects. But today, we're going to use the app to create a new project by tapping on the New Design section on the left of the screen. Okay, guys, let's get right into it. Clicking on New Designs opens up a page where we will make our design choices and enter our body measurements. But before we get started entering our information, let's review a couple of resources available right on this page. Scroll down to the bottom of the screen and click on the Definitions button. Here we find a drawing we affectionately refer to as Measurement Lady. She is here to show us exactly how to define the various measurements that the app asks us to enter. You can find even more detail on these measurements in Shirley's book, Knitwear Design Workshop, and you can even get a demonstration of how to take the measurements in Shirley's Craftsy class, Handknit Garment Design. Going back to the data entry page, you'll also see a button labeled Need Help? We all need help sometimes. Clicking this button will take you to Shirley's website where you can download a quick start guide to the app, or if you crave even more technical detail about how the app works, a full manual to using the guide. Now that you know where to find help, let's get started turning our design inspiration into a plan for knitting our garment. You should have already taken your body measurements, worked a gauge swatch, and calculated your stitch and row gauges, and made your design decisions such as the silhouette of your sweater, the shape of your neckline, and body and sleeve length. Starting at the top of the data entry screen, begin by selecting which sweater silhouette your design matches. The default selection is for a classic silhouette, but you can change to a single taper, double taper, or drop shoulder design by clicking on the Change button. Depending on which silhouette we choose, the app will ask us for different measurements, so choose your silhouette first. Shirley's book and her Craftsy class go into detail on the various silhouettes that you might choose. For today's example, let's stick with the classic silhouette. Enter a unique title for your current design. In the box below the title, add whatever notes you find useful. You might add things like who the sweater was designed for, what yarn and needles you used, or even what inspired you. Your next step is to select the measurement units you want to use. Select either inch or centimeter. It is important to always use the same unit throughout your work. Today we will work in inches. Now it's time to enter some detailed design decisions. Don't forget to refer to Shirley's book or class for inspiration and descriptions of the various possibilities. What type of neckline does your sweater have? You may choose either a round neck or a V-neck in the app. You'll also indicate your neck depth later. In our example, we'll choose a round neck. Select whether your garment shoulders are shaped or straight. Shaped shoulders will have a 1 inch or 2.5 centimeter slope from neck to shoulder edge. Now indicate whether or not your sweater is cropped. We're going for the standard length. Let's take a little time discussing odd and even stitch counts. An example of a design that requires an odd number of stitches would be a diamond pattern that you'd like to center right on the stitch that forms the point of the diamond. To make that happen, you need an odd number of stitches. But what happens if you have a design in which the center falls between stitches? For that, you'd need an even number of stitches. If you toggle yes, you can specify what stitch count you need for either your body or your sleeves or both. Now on to the very important gauge entry. Note that we are entering the number of stitches per inch or per centimeter, whichever unit we selected earlier, and not per 4 inches or 10 centimeters, as is often the case. Do the same for the row count as well. For our example, we are using a gauge of 6 stitches per inch and 9 rows per inch. Selvage stitches are the extra stitches added to the edge of garment pieces to make seaming easier. You can enter 0, 2, or 4 into this box. Entering 0 will not add any selvage stitches to the finished garment design. Entering a 2 will add 1 selvage stitch to either edge of the body and sleeve pieces, and entering 4 will give you 2 selvage stitches on each side. Let's add 1 selvage stitch to each side of our garment piece, or 1 plus 1 equals 2, so we enter a 2 in this cell. Now take your time and enter your body measurements carefully. Check that you are using the definitions of these measurements as are shown on Measurement Lady in the definitions link, as we reviewed earlier, or from Shirley's book, Knitwear Design Workshop. Starting with shoulder width, the distance from the outer edge of one shoulder to the outer edge of the other, in our example, we are entering 14 inches. For bust circumference, we're using 34 inches. Note that the numbers we are entering here are our actual body measurements, not the measurements of the finished sweater. We also indicate the ease we want in the garment, and the app uses that to calculate the finished garment measurements for us. For our example, we are specifying 2 inches of ease, which means our final garment will measure 34 inches plus 2 inches around, a total of 36 inches. Armhole depth is another measurement where we enter the actual body measurement, then indicate how much additional room we'd like below the armpit. We'll use 5 inches for our armhole depth and 2 inches for the depth below the armpit. Enter the neck depth, which is a garment measurement, the depth to the bottom of the neckline. Note that if you're adding a band to your neckline, the width of that applied band is not included in the neck depth. So if we want a 2-inch deep neck after a 1-inch band is added, we have to enter a 3-inch neck depth. Enter the body measurement for the upper arm and the desired ease in the garment. The waist to the underarm measurement, the hip to the waist measurement, the hip height, sleeve length, and wrist are all body measurements and are, as noted, defined in the definitions list we've already looked at. All that's left to do is click on Save, located in the upper right corner of the screen. If you didn't enter a measurement properly, you'll get an error message. Go back and correct it and hit Save again. And just that simply, we are taken to a list of all the design elements, ready for us to work with in knitting our garment. Clicking any button on the screen presents us with a stitch map for that element of our design. The sleeve is presented as a complete garment piece. We will combine the other elements to create the front and back of the garment. Let's take a closer look at the sleeve. Each square in a stitch map represents 1 stitch. This means the entire stitch map is very difficult to look at on a phone. You can, of course, enlarge or reduce the picture by using your typical screen actions like pinching or scrolling. But really, it's easier to either view this from a tablet or by printing the stitch map out. Just click Print in the upper corner and select your printer to do this. Working with the stitch map is easy. Just cast on the number of stitches shown across the bottom. Using your stitch pattern, work up the stitch map row by row. Row numbers are indicated on the right and left sides, and the number of stitches bound off are given at each row where there are fewer stitches. When you come to a spot where there is an additional square, simply work an increase in that row. As a designer, you will decide where and how to work it. When you come to a spot where there are fewer squares, bind off that number of stitches on that edge. Continue in this manner until you reach the final bind off. Let's go back to the lower body stitch map. The lower body stitch map shows just the edge stitches with any shaping and indicates how many stitches go between the edges. Just fill in those stitches and work as for the sleeves. Note that the front and the back are worked just the same. Use the armhole shaping and neck shaping to finish the body pieces. They also show just the edges, but include the details on stitch and row count that you need to put your garment all together. Refer to the Knitwear Design Workshop book or the Handknit Garment Design class for any additional guidance on knitting these elements together. Once you have knit the basic body pieces of your garment, you can add the finishing touches of collars or neckbands, cuffs, or other details as you wish. Before finishing up, let's touch on how to work with previous designs. If you click Back and then Home, you can go to Previous Designs and see what you just created. Just click to open it up and access the design elements as before by clicking Save. If you want to make a change to your design, you could do it here. But just remember, any changes you make to the entries below will delete your prior design, replacing it with your new design. To create a new design without deleting your first one, simply go back to the home page and start anew. After all, it takes just a few moments to enter the data and get started. As you develop new ideas for knitwear, don't forget that Knitwear Design Workshop is a treasure trove of both ideas and guidance. And with the Handknit Garment Design app to do much of the math for you, soon your design idea will be a beautiful reality.